alleged that Melanchthon chose Rite Vocatus because it was nebulous, because it was hard to define. And he picked it on purpose so that they would agree with it without knowing really what it meant.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what I found out recently. I've read a number of articles that said that Rite Vocatus, rightly called.
According to right.
Yeah. Well, you just, you're putting your definition there. And what I found is that for Melanchthon, Rite and the word recte are pretty much interchangeable. They're used synonymously in the Book of Concord. Okay. Also, that word rite, while in classical Latin, it could mean according to the established rites, according to the usage of the temple rites for whatever god, in classical Latin. Melanchthon usually uses it to mean that which is the right way. Okay. So it is a nebulous, it is an undefined sort of a statement, Rite Vocatus. Now, I've read some things that said that Rite Vocatus was a technical term going back to the Middle Ages that would have been readily understandable to the Roman Catholic side as well as to the Lutheran side, and would have packed more meaning than what it just seems to say. So I figured if this was the case, I should certainly be able to find the phrase Rite Vocatus showing up in a Google book search. So I did a Google book search, narrowed it down the dates between 1500 and 1600, and got tons of hits for Rite Vocatus, but all after 1530, and all discussing what Melanchthon meant by that phrase in Augustana 14. So then I decided, well, I'll check between 1500 and 1529. And I ran it all the way through, Rite Vocatus, Rite Vocati, Rite Vocato, etc., all the different declensions. Nothing.
You're kidding.
Nothing as a phrase regarding the ministry. Not used at all.
So what about Latin canon?
Well, that was published during that time frame. If it was, and there was lots of commentaries. Let me get to this. What I found is that I changed it and put in Rite Ordinatus, rightly ordained, and then there was a lot of hits. Between 1500 and 1529. So Rite Ordinatus seems to have been the commonly used phrase to talk about a priest who has been rightly ordained and the powers that he has because he's been rightly ordained. Rite Vocatus sounds similar to that, but it's different. So Melanchthon puts that into the confession. Then in the Confutation, John Eck and these others are looking at what Melanchthon wrote there, and they're like, this is fine as long as Rite Vocatus means called in accordance with the prevailing customs of the Catholic Church, whatever was done previously. And that's why it wasn't immediately clear to them what he meant by that. And then in the Apology, he comes back and says, well, yeah, we wanted to stay with the old canonical polity, but the cruelty of the bishops made that impossible. And in any case, we know that the true church is with us, who have the pure preaching of the gospel and the right sacraments. And because the church is with us, we know that those who are called by our church are correctly called. And so that's the way that he takes it. So Rite Vocatus is not a technical term, but it's very similar to a familiar phrase that was used quite often.
So in the German, it's more orderly called.
Yeah, ohne ordentlich.
Jonas is German. Sorry, what? Wasn't Jonas that did the German?
I don't recall. No, he did. Jonas did the German of the Apology. Melanchthon, I think, is still responsible for the German of the confession itself. But ordentlichen, I don't have that information right in front of me right now. But the question there is that any order, or is that a particular order? It's an orderly call, which would be a call that's according to order.
Yeah.
But what order is that? And then I think if you look in the broader context of the Book of Concord, it's not any old order that's being spoken of. It's being called, it's the biblical order that, like you look at Apology of the Augsburg Confession, Article 13, and it's got that part in there about ordination can be called a sacrament. Well, if it can be called a sacrament, that means it has divine command and a divine promise. So if ordination has a divine command, then that's certainly part of the call process, certainly part of that ordentlichen Beruf. So I take ordentlichen not as any old order, but as according to the orderly call, or a call that is orderly, but you have to, it's not specifying right there what that order would be. Just like in the Latin, the rite is not specifying what that rightness consists of.
Thanks.
Yeah. Sometimes people will get into some bad grammar and they'll take rite as an ablative of the noun ritus, but ritus is actually a fourth declension noun, and so the ablative singular is ritu. Rite as an adverb is related to ritus etymologically, but you can't do your definitions based on etymology, right, as you know. So that's a long answer to a short question.
No, that's good. Thank you. Thank you.